We've all got scars, some on the outside and some on the inside. But we can't be defined by our scars. I've spoken with some extraordinary people about how they've become empowered by their scars. This is I've Got Scars, baby. All right. Okay. So I'm so excited today. We have a very special guest. Her name is Dr. Selvi Vasudevan. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. I need y'all to understand because I don't like getting people's names wrong because I've had my name mispronounced, and I'm like, really? What's going on, people? What's happening? But you're having a really incredible story. And you are a medical doctor and a Crohn's disease survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to talk about listening to your body, and you have quite a story to share.
Yes, I do. I do.
Yes. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is going on? We're going to get into everything that you're doing now, but I want people to see what you've experienced. Because you are doing some amazing stuff now. But yes, so what is your story? What happened?
Oh gosh. So, the beginning of my story goes back almost a quarter century now. I can't believe it's been almost 25 years since I was diagnosed. Yeah. And at that point in time, I had no idea the mayhem I was in store for it. So to give you an idea, the first 3 years after I was diagnosed, within that time, I had 3 surgeries. I had 2 near-death experiences. I had an ostomy that was later reversed. I had a compression fracture because I was on really high doses of steroids and my bones got super weak. And I had after one of my surgeries, I had temporary liver failure and temporary kidney failure. So I was actually on dialysis for a little bit in the hospital. Thankfully, all of it reversed, but that was a lot. And that was all before I finished college.
Okay. I'm exhausted just hearing all of that.
It is like, what? But wait, there's more.
Yes, please. Like, what happened? Like, in the onset, like even diagnosis, what was going on in your life before you found out what was going on?
That's a good point because, looking back, I was sick for years, way before I was diagnosed. I kind of always had a quote unquote sensitive stomach. So we thought it was a stomach virus or, I caught something or what have you, and I'd have nausea or vomiting, diarrhea. I would get mouth ulcers a lot. And looking back, like that's a hallmark of Crohn's disease. And I had that going back to elementary school. Oh. And yeah, and no one was able to put those pieces together. I just always got sick really easily. And so, I was just kind of always weak. I didn't grow very much. I'm 5 feet tall, so again, stunted growth. 5 feet on a good day is my joke.
Oh, wow.
So that was happening for a long time, but there just wasn't the know-how. So, we'd ask the pediatricians what's going on. My parents tried to take me to a dentist to evaluate the mouth ulcers or other doctors, but no one put the pieces together to know that maybe I should go to a gastroenterologist, that maybe there was a chronic illness going on. For whatever reason, it wasn't on our radar at all. We'd never even heard of it. Like I'd never heard of this disease before I was diagnosed either. So, I remember being in the GI's office and he was like, "Oh yeah, Selvi, I'm afraid you have Crohn's disease." And I'm like, "Say what now? What the heck is that?" Like, yeah. Yeah, so it was on for a long time. So getting a diagnosis, it was kind of a relief, but it was also a curveball at the same time. I was like, all right, what does that mean? Like, what's going to happen? Yeah.
And so how old were you? Were you in college at this time?
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed, I was 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot going on for a 19-year-old. I mean, so you're diagnosed. And so what were you said it was kind of a relief because you already had a lot of stuff going on in your body. So what was life like on a daily basis for you with this? What did it feel like?
At the time of diagnosis, you mean, and shortly after?
Just what were your days like? You're a college student, you're trying to have some fun, like let's hang out. Let's go. Everybody's eating pizza all the time. What was it like for you?
That was a struggle because, part of me wanted so much to just fit in and not have to worry about, what I was going to eat and if I was going to get sick. And my gut would be possessed. Like one day it would seem like it was fine. The next day it's like, all right, like let's roll the dice and see what happens. And it's not glamorous either when stuff hits the fan, it is not glamorous. This is all gut stuff, right? So you're talking diarrhea, you're talking, weird sounds and funny gurglings. Like these are not things that are very pleasant to talk about in mixed company, at least in those days. Like now I don't really care, but at that point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I have to talk about dating because at that point in time, it's like, hey, how you doing? Oh, I have a crush on this guy. And then it's like, you might have to step away for a minute. Like, is that kind of what was going on? Was it just kind of like, were you able to feel like you could function and date normally, or was that
Yeah.
always on your mind?
That's a great question. So here's the long and short of it. My culture is that I'm Indian, right? And so I was your classic, Indian good girl. I didn't date in college
Okay.
at
Okay.
all. Because I was just so hell bent focused on getting to medical school. I was like, I don't have time for distractions. I'm not going to date. I'm clearly not going to get married right now. So no.
Gotcha.
But yeah, but I was putting extra pressure on myself in other ways for sure. So
Got you.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Well, at least that part wasn't, it
yeah.
involved, So, okay. So you have this diagnosis, and one of the things that we spoke about
Mhm.
was family
Mhm.
and how this diagnosis, how that made you feel as it pertained to family, culturally speaking. How
Mhm.
was that for you?
It was rough on multiple levels because, first of all, I couldn't process it. And my parents had clearly never seen anything like this. So, they had their own levels of fear and worry and all of that. So, on one level, it was like I felt like I needed to protect them. So, I kind of felt like I needed to, at least on the surface, project like things were okay, even if I was hurting on the inside. That was certainly there. Um, and I don't think they realized it because I was pretty good at what I was doing.
Yeah.
um, and on top of that, there was the whole cultural implication. Like there's this rampant, I guess, almost a driving force in the Indian culture of what will people think? What will people
Mm,
say
mm,
if they knew of this, if they knew of that, if they knew that I had a chronic illness, if they knew that I had an ostomy at the time? Like there were a lot of whispers, if you will. So it was very subtle, but it was certainly palpable. And so I felt like I just needed to close those parts of myself off, that I couldn't share those parts of myself. And
mm,
so a lot of shame for sure, and a lot of unprocessed trauma that just stayed inside of me for years.
And so how do you feel like it affected you? Because when you suppress anything,
Hmm.
and especially if I would imagine if you have a chronic illness already, it's going to exacerbate that, and there's going to be issues
Oh, yeah.
around that physically, but
Mhm.
then mentally, emotionally, what did you do to cope?
So I coped, and I laughed because I coped the only way I knew how, by throwing myself even further into my schoolwork, into my ambition, that sort of stuff.
Mm,
And so I pushed myself beyond my limits. So, and it would be in a way, like you said, the physical manifestations would be there. So I'd be driving to the hospital to see my patients, and I'd be screaming in pain at the wheel because my abdomen was in such pain and I wasn't showing up to take care of myself on a physical level. So I felt like I just needed to, that part would just kind of go away, or I'd take whatever medications to make it kind of shut up, and I would just keep my eye on the prize, so to speak, at any cost. And I pushed myself way too far in that sense.
wow.
Yeah.
So you're pushing yourself
Hmm.
so you don't have to deal with your feelings and emotions.
Yep.
How did that affect school? How did it affect you as a person? What did that tell you? Like, what were you communicating with yourself at that point?
Oh, I don't think I was communicating with myself. Like, I think I was, for the longest time, I was very shut off from myself, from my feelings, or I would go kind of back and forth, or I would be, in this very hyper emotional, almost self-pity state. But there wasn't like a healthy approach to my emotions or any of that, because I just didn't know how or what. And when they say doctors make the worst patients, I think that was partly true on my case too. So if someone offered a therapist, I don't think I would have taken them up on it either, because I'm like, I don't need a therapist or a psychologist, like whatever. Kind of, yeah, I was a little stubborn, just a little bit.
So you're just dealing with it. You're just
Yeah.
dealing with it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As you're moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
when did it get to a point where I can't handle it? When was the breakdown?
Oh gosh, that took a few more surgeries. That took a few more complications. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Until it was just like, I started getting to know the nurses on the admitting floor. I knew my surgeon way too well, and the same surgeon who's doing multiple surgeries, surgeons stereotypically are not thrilled to have you keep coming back to them. They usually just want to have the surgery and have it done and you go off. And so it was this whole thing of just going in and out, seeing the surgeon all the time, being in the hospital a lot, having complications. And I was just like, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, I can't live like this anymore. And that was kind of the breaking point. Was, I was on my, oh gosh, sixth, seventh surgery, something like that. And I was like, is this my life? Like, what the heck? I don't want to do this anymore. And I couldn't, like, I had to stop practicing medicine because I was in so much pain. I was so sick that I had to focus on myself. And so, excuse me, I lost, a lot of myself. I lost my sense of self. And it just became clear to me that if I didn't do anything, that this was just going to keep continuing and that I had to make a change. And so that was kind of, unfortunately, I kind of had to hit rock bottom for me to say, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
Enough. Yeah.
And what was the role of your parents at this point? They're seeing you have all these surgeries. Were they just kind of there by your side? What, did you still feel a sense of shame? Did they hide it from people? How was that?
Um, it almost became, and this might sound weird, it almost became like routine and accepted, at least within our family.
Mm.
Because it was like they were kind of used to seeing me go in and out, and they were used to seeing me sick for so long that to them, it almost became a new normal in a way. And they became isolated from, some of our family friends. So like I was missing out on functions for, like I missed out on a really close friend's wedding or, get-togethers, things like that. And it was the same for them too, because they felt they needed to show up for me and be there for me. And so even if sometimes all they could do was just be supportive, that's what they would do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that, I mean, it's good that they were there, because I know that's a lot.
It is. And,
That's,
my mom would literally be by my side like 24/7, so much support in the best way she knew how, which was just amazing because I had no reserves at that point.
yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So you hit rock bottom.
Hmm.
You're having all these surgeries. It's, mom is holding your hand every step of the way. What did you find that you needed to do to get on the road to health? And did you say something to yourself? Because I know some people hit rock bottom and they're just like, they might stay there for a while. But what was that thing that helped you to say, I don't want to live like this, and to do what it took to not live like that?
Hmm.
Because you would think, especially since you're a medical doctor, you're like, well, you have all the information, don't you? You have this, you have that. What's going on? So what was that thing that said, okay, you have to make a change now?
You know what? Like, you're right about the whole medical doctor thing and understanding.
Mhm.
Um, in some ways, it was almost a double-edged sword because I knew so much that I knew, about complications and things like that. But it got to the point where I was sort of running out of options, right? I was on extremely high doses of medications. I still wasn't doing well, and they didn't have a whole lot that they could offer me. And so at that point, it kind of became clear that either I'm going to be going on even higher doses of medications or risking more side effects, that I got to do something different. Like I've been just sort of sitting here and being like, all right, just give me whatever drugs you want, do whatever surgery you want, like just very passive. And that just became crystal clear that I needed to do something different. And so I started to explore alternative medicine. I'm like, what else is there? I wonder. And dietary changes and things like that. And that started the wheel rolling, if you will. Like once I started to learn to look at the body as a whole, as opposed to a bunch of discrete pieces and discrete systems, that was a game changer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was the road back to health? What did it look like? And was it just dietary changes, or was it also some other inner work that you felt like you had to do as well?
Oh, definitely, definitely. The inner work came a little bit later, I would say. I think the dietary changes, at least initially, were easier to approach. So I started making some of those changes, cutting out some of the processed food and, starting with small changes. And the more that I started to implement, I learned a lot about what worked. I learned a whole lot about what didn't work too. Funny how that works, because I was sort of trial and erroring things. And then eventually, like in the course of this whole, searching out alternative medicine, I came across this acupuncturist who had a heavy spiritual background. And then I started to do more of, like the work on my patterns and the inner child work and shadow work and that sort of stuff. And those things made a huge, huge difference just in terms of, that voice in my head and freeing me from that internal prison, if you will, the emotional healing, the mental healing. Big, big, big change. Yeah.
So I'm glad that you talked about that,
Mhm.
the shadow work and all of that stuff. Like it's it can be very scary for people to go to the crevices of their mind that they didn't know were really there, and you find some things. For you, what did you really find? What are some things that you could share that you found doing that work? Because and I say that because if you just kind of look from the outside looking in, okay, you have a supportive family, they're there for you, you are going through this physical illness,
Mhm.
but you're a medical doctor, and but at the same time you've been sick for so long
Mhm.
there, but even when you were sick you weren't necessarily trying to really deal with it
Mhm.
in the moment. You're just kind of, well, I'm just gonna focus on school, focus on school, focus on school, and that's just, and then now you get to the point where you can't just keep focusing on work, you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
What were the reasons, what were you trying not to see that you found out, that you discovered during your shadow work?
Mm. There was a lot of fear that was inside. Like fear had been driving me for so long, right? Like if I didn't accomplish this thing or I wasn't perfect at whatever, it was some almost like a quest for love, a quest for approval, if you
Mm.
will. Um, Fulfilling some of, familial unfulfilled dreams also was a part of that, too. And so then I realized that, wow, maybe I could actually let myself off the hook. Like maybe I didn't need to be a perfectionist. Like maybe it was okay. And so of course the perfectionistic person is the one with the chronic illness who wound up with the ostomy and, the weird draining stuff that, no, let's just be honest, didn't smell all that great either. Like, of course that was going to happen because I had to face it. And so, and come to peace with it. And that was rough. That was really rough. That was like, like the proverbial crown falling off the head of like, oh gosh, fall from grace. And yeah. And eventually it was like finally relief. But initially, oh man, I was kicking and screaming the whole way. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. And do you feel like a lot of the need for perfection, did that come? Do you think that was a cultural thing, or do you think that was just a part of your personality? Do you feel like your parents just like really expected so much from you and you wanted to please them? What do you feel like that was?
Definitely a little bit of cultural, certainly for a bit, because my parents were first generation immigrants. So there was a little bit of that, you know, you need to kind of do more and work harder to prove yourself, to be respected in society and to make something of yourself, you know, which looking back now, that's kind of a little funny, but you know.
Yeah.
And also, of course, the expectations too. Like, yes, you go to school, you should get good grades. You know, I remember this one statement, like all of my friends were having high school graduation parties. And I came home and I said, I want to have a graduation party. And my parents just kind of looked at me like, you're supposed to graduate high school. What do you want a party for? Like, what? They were so confused. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, then.
Yeah. That definitely is a cultural difference, because it's like in America, you celebrate everything like, oh my God, you turned 2. Woo! You know, it's like,
Yeah, then I started seeing babies
okay.
having, you know, cakes every month. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Like, woo, you came into the house after school. Woohoo! Like, you know, well, where else am I supposed to go? So I get it. It can seem like I get that. But at the same time, there is a sense of celebrate yourself for certain accomplishments, and there's a balance, I think, for everything. And
Yeah.
so, wow, that's a lot. So that's a
Yeah.
lot to keep inside of yourself, and you're only 5 feet tall. So it's just like there's no space for all of this. This is too much. But no, I understand. So on your road to recovery, what one thing, like what do you feel like you've even, well, actually before we get to that part,
Okay.
you are moving, you are now doing some amazing things and working with other people to help them. Like, so how are you feeling now? How is life for you now?
Oh gosh, life has turned 180 degrees. It was almost like I had to go through everything I went through to appreciate the good times. You know, it was like, so I knew and I saw how bad things could be. Like I almost saw the worst of it, if you will. And so now I can appreciate the good times so much more. So small things, you know, give me intense gratitude. And there's nothing like coming close to death a few times to really show you the value of life,
Yeah.
right? So in that sense, things have really shifted for me. I feel healthy, of course. I feel healthy. I feel vibrant and radiant in my own body. And it's a lot of hard work, but it's such a gift too, you know, to get there, for sure. And you know, when I finally started to live life and started doing things that before were never on my radar, like never even possible, like leaving the house, like driving or seeing friends, um, or, you know, traveling. I spent like this huge chunk of time where I was just at home in pain all the time with a hot water bottle on my back, you
Wow.
know, just pacing the house. It was miserable. So finally, when I started living, I was like, whoa, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. And eventually, yeah, when things really started to open up, that was when I had a light bulb moment. And I was like, you know what? This could translate to other people. Like maybe other folks could benefit from this too, like everything that I'm learning. I wonder. And so that was when I decided to become a certified health coach, although I'm a trained medical doctor, because I saw how much more of an impact I could make as a health coach with my
Mm.
patients. And so that was the driving force behind that. And then I seamlessly streamlined everything together from my medical training to my healing journey to my health coaching certification, put it all together so that I could work really closely with other people who have irritable bowel disease and help them to address their gut dysfunction from the inside out. And that gives them back their energy, it gives them back their confidence, and it allows them to finally go out and live life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what do you feel like is that, what have you heard from people that's kind of like, this seems to be one of the main reasons people are having issues with their gut specifically? Is it just strictly diet? Is it a lot of it a mental something? You know,
Mhm.
because they say your gut is your second brain. So, like, what is that kind of through line that you've seen with a lot of your patients or a lot of
You
your
know, it's
clients?
Yeah, no, it's amazing because when I see, someone who comes to me and they're telling me about their physical symptoms, inevitably there's other things going on too. So I can give you an example of someone I was working with recently who's a gentleman who came to me with ulcerative colitis, and he had bloating and constipation, but he was also depressed, and he was also just feeling lost, and his relationship was suffering, at home his marital relationship was really suffering. And so it's multifactorial, like everything influences everything, which is why I love that holistic perspective. Like you said, your brain health influences your gut health, and your gut health influences your brain health, and your immunity is tied to your gut health. So all of these things are intimately tied together, and when you start addressing the gut from the inside out, like everything starts to fall into place. And
Wow.
so over time, like not only did he start to have a healthier bowel function, he knew what to eat, he knew what worked and what didn't work for him, but his relationship started to heal. His work prospects started to open up. And this is a grown man, right? 52 years old. He would get emotional on the calls with me, like, on our Zoom calls, telling me how much his life was changing and that he was experiencing a quality of life he didn't think possible. And then I was crying. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Uh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so
Yeah.
beautiful to see. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really glad that we're having this discussion because so many times I don't think we're just not really taught
Mhm.
how much our mental health affects our physical health.
Yes,
We're just not educated in that way.
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I dismissed it for myself too for the longest time. Like, oh, yeah, yeah, my mental health was fine. No, it wasn't. Please. Heck no. Uh-uh.
And here's the thing. I so many times the concept of mental health is considered taboo, and it's just like, okay, we can't be talking about mental health. I'm not crazy, or like those types of things. You hear that, but I think that we have to understand there's so much happening in the world. There's so many messages we're receiving. Like there are what between 4,000 and maybe 8,000 advertisements we're seeing on a daily basis.
Totally.
Just just imagine that's so much information.
Hmm.
Then you're seeing certain things, or maybe you see something on social media and somebody's sad. If you're an empath in any type of way, if you feel anything, you're gonna be like, ah, and something inside of you is gonna feel that. You're gonna pick that up.
Yeah.
You're gonna whatever.
And then
We
watch the news for a while and
oh my gosh, you might as well just call it a day and just be in the bed sad with the pillow. Okay, it's the chicken
totally.
boxes. So so we're picking up so much, and I think people think that, oh, something's wrong with me, I'm bad, I'm not strong enough if something mentally isn't in alignment, or is, I'm feeling sad or whatever. And I'm just like, actually, it will kind of be weird if you weren't a little depressed or a little anxious, or because that means you're not, something about you is not connected to what's going on around you. I mean,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
there's just so much that you can't miss it. And this is not even addressing what trauma you might have experienced as a child.
Exactly. And it's like you said, with all the stimulation, like our human brains were not wired to take in that much stimulation. So of course everyone's on overdrive and anxious and what have you. Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like, even when I talk about food, like that's one of the things. What are you consuming, right? In terms of your media, your social media, your books, all of that sort of, what are you taking in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, so I'm really glad we're having this conversation, because it's like, if you're feeling weird, whatever, mentally, we get it. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's not okay, as in, we don't want you to feel bad. We don't want you to feel the negative feelings, but at the same time, they are there. And it's like, well, let's do something about it,
Yeah.
because it is affecting the rest of you. And so
Yes.
I'm glad that we're talking about putting those things together. and
Yeah.
you've experienced it personally. And I think that that's one of those things too, is when, you can always say something to somebody like, oh yeah, it'll be better, it's fine, you'll just do these things. But when you've experienced it,
Yes. Yes.
you're like, look.
Exactly. And that's one of the things also that's wound up actually being a gift was, people are like, oh yeah, you have actually walked a mile in my shoes.
Yeah.
And that was one of my frustrations when I used to see doctors, was they never understood. So yeah. And like you said also about, the whole mental health, or, even just like feeling off, like just having that permission to be like, it's okay for you to voice that you're feeling this way. You don't need to hide it. Like that's so important, I feel. So yeah, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation too.
Ah, man. Okay. Okay. So if someone is having some physical symptoms, or they're feeling a little off, or they're just not feeling quite right. And I mean, hey, it's right now it's 2020, so I'm pretty sure that's pretty much everybody. It's
Pretty
like
much.
everything's weird right now. I don't know how to feel. But what would you say to some of your clients that, to just someone out there, what can I do today to take better care of myself, or to, like, I know something doesn't feel right, whether it's physically or mentally, emotionally, what can they do today?
Oof, well, there's a lot that they can do today, but let's stick to maybe two things. So I would say take a look at your media consumption first, especially this year. I feel like so many of us have been glued to either the TV or the internet and what's going on, and it's just constantly a barrage of all sorts of highs and lows, and it's a lot. So what are you taking in? Is it serving you? Is it not serving you? That would be the invitation to take a look. And and don't hate me for this, but sugar.
Mm,
um, Especially added sugars can really wreak havoc with both your gut health and your brain health. And if you've tried to get off of it and you've struggled, like that's completely understandable. Sugar is highly addictive, like almost as addictive as crack cocaine.
mm,
So if you're struggling, fair point, but there are ways to deal with it. And I would recommend, going with fruit, natural sugars first, and then slowly getting off. And artificial sweeteners actually stimulate your brain in a very similar way. So there are people who are like, oh, well, there's no calories in, say, aspartame or something along those lines, but your brain is still picking it up the same way. And so, yeah, and it can also affect your gut. So, yeah, those would be two things that I would recommend for sure.
wow. Ah, that's perfection right there. I feel like those two things, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can make it another day, because
So true.
those things are so, that's huge. That is huge. And we're just, I think, so used to that stuff
Yeah.
that it just becomes normal until your body rejects it in
Mhm.
some form of way, some form. It's
Yeah.
gonna be like, look, no, I
Mhm.
need you to shut all of that down, and we're gonna go take a nap, because
It's
I
true.
can't take it. But you have to listen to your body. At the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here, is listening to your body, um, and and giving yourself permission to feel what you really feel.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you're feeling off, whether it's mentally, physically, it's okay. It's a lot going on. Nobody's gonna blame you for feeling like not quite right.
Yeah.
And but do something about it. And so if they would like to work with you, connect with you, how can they do that?
So the easiest way would be to go to my website. It's www.drselvi.com. That's drselvi.com. And I actually have right now a free gift on there. It's a starter kit to help people kind of get started with their journeys. And there's also a way, if they scroll down to the bottom, there's a button that says Let's Chat, and they can book a call with me if anyone wants to, has personal questions or, is interested in learning more. I'm happy to connect.
That is wonderful. I'm loving it. And I'm telling you, man, somebody who's experienced it, that's the best person to talk to, because they're like, hey, I do not want you to go through the stuff that I went through. You know?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And it's also like, I mean, sometimes we can make light of certain things too. Like, someone's talking to me about flatulence. I'm like, yep, been there, done that. Uh-huh. And then we just start laughing about it. Like it's no big deal, Like,
That's
yeah.
I love it. I love that. And just one thing that you can say about how this experience has empowered you.
Ooh. Wow. Only one? No, I'm kidding.
1, 2, 3,
Knowledge for sure. So I've learned a lot. I feel like it's helped me to grow and change in ways that I never thought possible. And that's been such a huge gift for me. So I love when I meet people who not only can I give back to, but who challenge me, who are like, give me more healing modalities, tell me more things that I can do. And that forces me to keep, researching more and learning more. And this is, for me, it's a lifelong journey, like just continued searching into things that can help. How can I take my health to the next level? What else can I bring to patients? And that's probably it, just that constant growth and expansion has been such a gift and really empowering. So for me to go from being afraid to just get through the day to finally being like, you know what? I take responsibility for my body. I take responsibility for my experience, and I can show others too. That's been the ultimate gift.
I love it. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. This is amazing. And yeah, like check her out, drselvi.com. Yes, so wonderful meeting you, and I'm so happy you were a part of the show. What a blessing.
Thank you, Audra. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. You're an absolute delight.
Oh.